Can a mushroom design a dress? Hi, I'm Judith Brachmann. I'm an art historian and fashion theorist, and this is the first episode of Moden. Nature has always played a crucial role for dress and fashion, whether as a material for textiles or as a source of inspiration. But when we think of nature and fashion, we tend to think about the fur of animals, plant fibers, or flower designs. But what about mushrooms? Do they offer themselves as design inspiration? Can they be used to make textiles? Or to even design a dress in collaboration with them? Before we get to fungi as a material and co-designer, let's have a look at the historical use of mushrooms and dress first. Mushrooms have long been used to create dyes for fabrics, with the earliest known example dating back to around 10,000 BC. Lichen, for example, which are a hybrid of fungi and algae, were used for coloring textiles in violet and purple shades in the Mediterranean region. They were much cheaper and way more accessible than the sea snails, which were used to produce royal purple. And some species of fungi even produce a blue color when used on wool fibers, which is one of the rarest colors to be found in nature. Interestingly, there are discoveries that indicate that mushrooms and fungi have been used as a colorant on every populated continent. And yet, other natural dyes made from plants or wood, for example, were much more widely used. Mushrooms often have to be combined with certain minerals or plants to achieve a certain color, and the colors they produce tend to be quite sensitive to light. And we as humans didn't know half the species we know today. It was only in recent decades that a systematized approach to listing different fungi and the colors they produce in textiles was taken, as many species were only identified in the 20th and 21st century. And we still don't know for sure how many species there are and what they could be used for. It is estimated that there might be 2 to 3 million species, of which only 150,000 are described and classified today. And while we typically think of the mushroom, the fruiting body, most of the organism actually lives underground and is composed of a network of long threads called the mycelium. This fungal network that connects the forest, helping trees swap nutrients and even communicate, was the inspiration for the Alexander McQueen Autumn-Winter 2022 show. Designer Sarah Burton translated this idea into the collection, for example with colorful fungal applications on black dresses, as well as voluminous shapes of gowns that reminded of the fruiting bodies. Besides some literal references to mushrooms that were applied to the garments, threads growing out of the knitwear were reminiscent of mycelium threads. 2 suits were painted with dye that looked like spores, which are sprayed by mushrooms to reproduce. And ruffles on the clothes reminded of the gills of lamella fungi. These lamella structures have inspired other designers as well. In her collection Roots of Rebirth, Iris van Herpen presented dresses that seem to be unfolding like growing fruiting bodies. Mycelium thread structures were cut into the creations, while the volume of the dresses also brought mushrooms to mind. The collection was presented as a filmed runway show, which also featured animated spores spraying from the ground on which the models walked. But fungi not only serve as a design inspiration for collections, they are even used to create fashion objects. This approach to incorporating fungus into fashion was chosen by the Belgian designer Margiela. In 1997, he collaborated with microbiologists for an exhibition which was shown in the Museum Boijmans van Beuningen in Rotterdam. 18 objects from previous collections of Margiela were reproduced in white fabric and then sprayed with green mold, pink yeast, and yellow or pink bacteria. After the spore and bacteria treatment, the garments were stored in optimum conditions for the growth of the bacteria and fungi to accelerate the decomposition on the one hand and the growth of the fungi on the other hand. In the exhibition, the partly overgrown, partly corroded pieces were displayed outside of the museum, visible through the big glass front. Not only throughout the preparation process, but also throughout the length of the exhibition, the garments were ever-changing, partly growing, partly disappearing, depending on the used fungi and bacteria. A similar technique was chosen by Australian designer and researcher Donna Franklin. She created a slip dress made of silk and pleated organza, on which she applied the orange bracket fungus. It grew over time and took over the garment, turning it orange. Franklin manipulated the mycelium to grow and attach itself to the surface of the textile, where the mushroom then grew down the dress. While being exhibited over many months in different exhibitions, the dress, called Fiber Reactive, at one point even hosted a layer of penicillin, another fungus, which was not planned or incorporated by Franklin at all. But after some time, and with some help by Franklin, the orange bracket fungus regained the upper hand and got the penicillin to vanish again. To keep the fungi, and therefore the dress, alive, it had to be fed with nutrients, ensuring that it will change and grow down the textile base. This example reminds us of the aliveness of natural materials and the relations between humans and the non-human nature. But while the creations by Margiela or Donna Franklin are shown in exhibitions, some fashion innovators are working to broaden the scope of mycelium and fungus-based garments. In recent years, textile designers have found a way to produce so-called Mycelium Leather. The company Bold Threads, for example, produces Milo, a vegan leather alternative grown in a farming facility. Some prototypes for products made out of Milo were designed by Stella McCartney, Adidas, or Lululemon, and they are not the only ones using mushrooms and fungi to create more sustainable pieces of clothing. Aniela Hoitink, for example, also experiments with mycelium-based materials. The Dutch designer uses so-called microtex to form garments with 3D molds that don't need to be sewn or cut, and after being worn, they can even be buried to decompose. In their paper on textile relations, Danielle Brüggemann and Liane Toussaint reflect on the example of Aniela Hoitink's creations and how these garments shape our relationship with nature. They reflect on the process of creating garments from fungi, bacteria, or algae, and how we are engaging in a process of co-designing or designing with. They refer to the term companion species by philosopher Donna Haraway to describe the mycelium leather used by Hoitink. But what does Haraway mean with the term companion species? And how does this help us with understanding fashion? In her texts, Donna Haraway challenges our view of humans as an exceptional or superior species. Instead, she provides us with a worldview where all species are connected and influence and shape each other, suggesting a way to rethink our relationship with the non-human nature. The term companion species, then, not only describes dogs or other domesticated animals, but all beings, plants, microbes, and of course fungi. She stresses the entanglement of the species, but also the accountability that comes from this living with, as she coins it. And fashion researchers like Brüggemann and Toussaint use this framework to look at our relationship with the species that are co-designing the garments. How could our interaction with our garments change if we stopped looking at fabric and materials as passive matter from which we sew clothes, and instead ask ourselves who and what is involved in the process of designing? And how are these species and even our clothes influencing us? In cases like Margiela's exhibition or Donna Franklin's dress Fiber Reactive, it becomes apparent how fungi can be regarded as co-designers. Yes, the spores or mycelium threads are applied by humans, but the fungi and mushrooms are not entirely under their control. And while the designers can prepare the conditions and feed the nutrients, the fungus growing on the dress is very much alive and is therefore shaping the result, which is the garment. Although these experimental mushroom dresses may not be wearable in the everyday, they are artistic interventions reminding us of our connection and even our responsibility for the non-human nature. They can also provide us with a new perspective on the worth and the impact our relationship with our clothes has. Mycelium leather, however, could be a real alternative for animal leather. It is much cheaper to produce and more sustainable, while still providing mostly the same qualities. Until now, textiles and garments made from fungi are not produced at such a scale that they could replace the amount of fast fashion that is fabricated today, but they could play a more and more important role in the future. And with new species being discovered every single week, there could be even more areas of application for fashion and dress made out of mushrooms. Thank you so much for watching. You can find all sources down below, and I really hope to see you in the next episode of Moden.